I'm going to talk about onions today, and it's coming up to the point really where it's the optimum time, I think, to sow onions. You can sow them a bit earlier than today, or you could sow them, into early February. But now is the time to get sowing your onions, and there's quite a lot to think about actually about that, how to do that. And today I'll just talk briefly about the kind of decisions that you need to take about when you're sowing and planting your onions. And I've also got an ebook, and that takes you all the way through the whole process. In fact, it covers all the alliums, and it goes through from sowing all the way through to storage. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. I'll also talk a bit about the varieties that we're sowing and why we're sowing them, etc. So, yeah, decision making about onions. Now, the first thing you've really got to decide is, what are you trying to achieve from your onion crop? So in my case, I want not maximum yield, but I want a really high yield from all of my onions. And in fact, I want a high yield from all of my alliums, because our objective really is to get a lot of medium-sized veg. We don't want big veg, and we don't want small veg. We want everything in kind of that medium range. Now, a medium-sized onion for us is just about what we'll use in a day, so we don't end up having the fridge cluttered up with loads of massive onions, all cut in half, or leeks cut in half, or anything like that. Everything we use, we sort of harvest fresh and use that day. The other thing is that there's loads of advantages, I think, to high-density planting. The ebook takes you through all the details of this, but just to illustrate a few of the points. So obviously, high density planting takes up less space, it's easier to water. If you use nematodes like we use to protect against the onion fly, you use less nematodes. It's easier to protect your crop, you use less compost when you're sowing, there's less messing around, no pricking out, no potting on or anything like that. We just really like high density growing. We typically could go for. So I'll just quickly interrupt this video because I made a mistake. So I did say in the video that I plant 200 onions per square metre, and I got that muddled up. I plant 100 onions per square metre, so it's 200 per bed, and my beds are about 2 metres squared. So so it's 100 onions per metre squared. That's what I meant to say. Carry on. Per square metre. And that's kind of nice. You can go up a little bit. You could go up to 250 if you wanted absolutely maximum yield, but then you would get a lot of small onions as part of that yield. So we think about 200 is about right. You get about enough small onions for pickling, and a few big onions, that's fine as well, but mostly you're getting medium-sized onions. So let's get on with sowing then for maximum yield. So I'm going to sow in these trays with 40 cells, and typically I'm looking for about 3 onions in each cell. You can see on that tray probably, hopefully, if I zoom up there, that in this cell here we've only got 2, actually maybe 3, there we've only got 1, here we've got 3 or 4. If I got 5, then I'd probably just pull one out. I don't really want more than 4. So in order to do that, let's just take a look briefly at the sowing. So I did just want to take you quickly through my sowing database and show you the alliums that we're sowing in January. And I'll just trim this database down just to show you the alliums. This database, by the way, is freely available. Just check out the link in the description and you can customize it to your heart's content. Anyway, so we're sowing Paris Silver Skin. So they're a really nice pickling onion, but they also grow on to maturity. And I really like onions like that have got multiple uses, because if you oversow, which we generally do, then sometimes you can't use everything, for example, as a pickling onion or as a salad onion. And if you can just let those grow on and use them as a main crop, then that's very versatile. Next one up is a Red Baron, which is one that we're sowing as a main crop. Bedfordshire Champion, Ailsa Craig, all really good keepers, all really good main crop onions. And then we've done 2 batches of zabrun. And zabrun is an onion, but it looks like a shallot and it tastes like a shallot. And so, to all intents and purposes, it can be thought of as a shallot. We really like it. We multi-sow all of these, typically 3. We want 3 germinated seedlings per cell, and so we generally sow 4 seeds to achieve that. And leeks, yeah, so we're sowing 2 types of summer leek. The first one is Lincoln, and that is a true summer leek. And the second one is Electra, and that's another very versatile one that can be sown as a summer leek, harvested from sort of late July through all the way through autumn. But if you end up wanting to leave it, then it will mature and it's very winter hardy as well. So it can be used as a winter leek. So again, that same sort of versatility. Stir on is another one like that. It's a great main crop onion, really reliable, but it's a fantastic salad onion as well. And so we really like it for that purpose. The only thing to bear in mind if you're using a main crop onion like stir on, or for example North Holland Blood Red, if you're using those as a salad onion and you sow them in, say, April time, then they'll very rapidly bulb up. And so that's fine if you like your salad onions with a big bulb, but if you don't, then stick to something like White Lisbon, which is less prone to bulbing in spring. So I think that's basically what I wanted to show you in terms of the different varieties that we're sowing in January and February. All of these we've sown in January, but you could also sow them just as successfully in February. Instead of planting them out early April, you'd probably plant them out mid-April if you did that. Now, as I've already mentioned, I am going to leave these onions in these module trays without pricking out, without potting on. And I can do that because I'm planting out in April, so they're only in here for a couple of months. But you do need to make sure that there's plenty of compost in these modules, so I'll show you what I do for that. So the key thing is to give it a good push down. Now, it's really difficult to compress compost to the point at which it's sort of detrimental to the things that are growing in it. You don't have to worry that you're kind of compressing it like you might do soil and causing compaction. You can give it a really good push down, settle it into all the corners, and then of course refill it and repeat. So this means now lots of compost, lots of water retention capability, lots of nutrients, but at a low density because I'm only using seed sowing compost, so it's not that nutrient rich, and very easy to get the modules out once we're ready to plant. And that's important because we want to plant them when they're nice and young. So when we come to actually sowing them, I just use my finger. I'm just pushing in about 1 centimetre down. You kind of just get a feel for what 1 centimetre is after you've done it thousands of times like I have. But yeah, it's a quick and easy process. So I generally always water in the same way when I'm doing seedlings. I'm just top watering with this little sprinkler, and I won't switch to bottom watering until the plants are growing really strongly and using up a lot of water. I really don't like bottom watering in the beginning because there's just nowhere for the water to go. And so it just sits sort of stagnant in the modules. The roots are too wet. There's not enough oxygen in there. And that may be my preference, because you'll notice I don't use any vermiculite or perlite or anything like that. I just use compost in my modules, and so there's no kind of inert substance there to hold the air or anything like that. So I also wanted to show you a couple of sections from my little ebook. So the first one is in the basic section, and that's the sowing section. And so this covers, basically how I sow seeds generically, compost that I use, how I plan my sowing database and all that sort of thing that I just showed you. It also shows you, right down to the pens and the labels and the containers, the module trays, the plant pots, the watering, testing seeds, chitting seeds, pricking out seeds, module sowing, multi-sowing, all that sort of stuff. So it's pretty useful from that point of view. Okay, so that's the sowing over with. Now I will put these seeds in a cool place. So generally I like a cool bedroom, just on the floor out the way in a corner, and that will be about 16 to 18 degrees centigrade. And that's about perfect, about 10 days time before they'll break surface. And then it depends how early you are, but if you're in the middle of February, they can just go on a sunny windowsill. Just turn them every day on that sunny windowsill until March, and then I'd put them in a greenhouse or a polytunnel, something like that. You don't want them too warm though, so don't put them in a really warm sunny windowsill. Something that gets about 5 or 6 hours of sun is probably fine. Don't let them get too leggy. If you see them getting too thin and long, then probably best in your polytunnel or your greenhouse. Then I plant mine out in April. Now it kind of depends on the weather as to exactly when in April, but I want them in by the middle of April. And they'll look really small, spindly little things, but I love to plant them young, partly because they just take up so much space, and so I want to get them in the ground, but also because I find that they just grow so well, so much better once they're in the ground. When you want this big crop, this maximum yield crop. So by about May they're looking really strong. By June the bed is like heaving with with onion tops. You'd have to take care as well when you're fertilising. So we tend to want really slow release fertiliser for them. That's got a reasonable amount of nitrogen in it in the beginning, but then that amount of nitrogen kind of declines over the life of the onion. And that's important because what you don't want is you don't want too much leaf growth by the time the onions start to bulb. Now this is quite an important topic. If you're growing overwintered onions, they start to bulb when daylight hours exceed 14 hours. So that, for us, that happens in the middle of April. So you really want them focused on bulb growth by the middle of April. So your nitrogen fertilizer needs to be sort of declining at that time. And anything like compost, bloodfish and bone, something like that, that's the sort of fertiliser that you want. For onions that are sown this year, so January, February time, they start to bulb in May, middle of May. And again, so you want them to be at maximum leaf growth sort of thing by about that sort of time. So they've got loads of leaf to support the bulbing process. As I said, that will start middle of May. So that's the kind of key thing. Get lots of leaf growth by the middle of May and then focus on bulbing. And as I said, I just go for everything that's as simple as possible. So the best thing for me is bloodfish and bone and a mulch of spent mushroom compost. That's a really nice fine mulch. It suppresses the weeds. You get very few weeds germinating on the surface of it. And so there's not much weeding. And obviously if you've got very high intensity planting, then it's a real struggle to get in there to weed. So a nice sterile compost mulch, as I said, spent mushroom compost is my favoured mulch, is the way to go. So what else? Yeah, we put a bit of seaweed meal down as well. There's not much nitrogen in that, but it's full of micronutrients. And in the ebook I'll cover all the sort of fine details, and I'll go through that a little bit later. Harvesting, we tend to harvest ours when they start to fall over, and that tends to be for us first, second week in August. And to be honest, we'll probably take them out in the middle of August regardless. They're almost always finished by then anyway. But we take them out then because we really want to get a spinach crop in. And we want that spinach crop to be finished by early October, because then we want to put our field bean crop in. So yeah, timings are pretty important to us to get all the successions through in a year. So after we've harvested the onions, we leave the roots on and we leave the tops on. And that's important because a chemical that's produced in the leaves and absorbed by the bulbs during the drying process, that stops the bulbs starting to sprout, so it suppresses that sprouting, and that's essential for long storage. So that's pretty important. We store ours in a really nicely ventilated little greenhouse, put them on wire racks, and keep the doors open, keep the roof vents open, so lots of ventilation. Don't stack them, so a single layer ideally, although you could push it perhaps to a layer of 2 thick. And we leave them for about 4 to 6 weeks until they're kind of rustling. You know, they've got to be so dry that they rustle. The outer leaves on the onions need to rustle as well. The roots need to be crumbly and breaking up. And at that point we just want to put them somewhere with nice and cool, low humidity, and good luck with finding that in late summer and early September. But yeah, we do our best, and basically we're putting them in this workshop sort of environment, not a lot of sun, and they will keep until about April time. And at that point we've got plenty in the freezer. I'll talk a bit about that in the ebook as well. But we'll also have plenty of spring onions at that point. We'll have other alliums, so we'll have green garlic, for example. And we will also not be far off starting to harvest some of the overwintered onions as small onion bulbs, so about a 1 inch in diameter, something like that. And then we'll progressively harvest the winter onions all the way through, and the spring onions and the green garlic, until we start harvesting our main crops again in early August sort of time. So we're back to the little ebook. Last time we were on my iPad, and now we're on the phone. And so we're going into growing guides and onions and alliums all year round. And before we get into this, I just wanted to say that my focus is on high yield as easy as possible. If you want a more meticulous process that results in a lower yield but really nice big onions and leeks and other alliums as well, then I really do recommend a couple of other channels. First is Rob from Leicester. He's fairly new to YouTube, but his videos are great. He's got a really meticulous process, and the way that he grows results in really nice big large onions, perfect for showing, for example. And also Nigel from the Muddy Boots channel, again another great large onion grower. So I really do recommend those two channels. My channel in general, and in alliums specifically, is all about really high yield all year round. So here's a little ebook. What I cover in here is a kind of introduction to onion growing and allium growing in general, why we do it, why it's worthwhile even though they're so cheap in the shops. Then a bit about the life cycle of alliums, drilling into onions in particular, quite a bit about overwintering onions, garlic, green garlic, shallots, leeks, salad onions. We're a massive proponent of salad onions, so lots on that. Bit of a chat about what your objectives are in terms of growing onions, multi-sowing, watering, pricking out, potting on, or why not to do those things, planting density, my planting densities. Yours might vary depending on criteria that are discussed in the ebook. a few more tricks for bigger harvests, interplanting, progressive harvesting, a little bit on pests and diseases, but also links to other sources. And then what I think is really useful, a nice month-by-month guide that steps you through what we're harvesting, what we're sowing and what we're planting in each month. And then a nice little overview of that, which is drawn from my database. You can actually click on these links for more information. And then information on harvesting and storing. More videos, lots of embedded videos all the way through here. More on green garlic, elephant garlic. And a little bit about on what we grow before and after our onions. And then these are all the varieties that we're growing this year. And again, you can click on these for more information. And then the associated videos. So we've got lots more videos on the alliums in addition to the ones that are linked in the actual ebook. And so that's it. And so I hope you enjoyed this quick video. My name's Steve. This is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.